Awesome. And welcome to everyone who is joining us today. We are in literally different parts of the world right now. I'm in New Zealand together with Aaron Bennett, but Aaron is in Tauranga, which is where I live normally. But I'm right now still on holiday and I'm in the beautiful city of Dunedin. And I just found out that it's probably one of the oldest sort of cities in New Zealand. Am I right to say that, Aaron?
I think so, yeah. One of the
Yeah.
older ones, yep.
And it's amazing because I see a lot of very beautiful architecture. There's that railway station which is so grand. Really reminds me of like old Europe. A lot of the buildings here were built in the sort of maybe mid 1800s to the early 1900s. Very classic Edwardian style. And it's so apt because we're going to be talking about real estate with Aaron today. So I thought, oh, that's quite a nice coincidence. But before we start, I would just like to do a short prayer and bless this time that we have together. Is it all right? Okay, cool. Heavenly Father, we invite your presence. We honor you. We thank you that we can sit down like this and just have a chat. It's summer, so no fireside, but we thank you for technology. And we pray that everything will go smoothly today. And we want to bless this conversation. May it be an encouragement, most of all, to the people who will be watching it either today, right now, or sometime to come. And all this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, thank
Amen.
you so much, Aaron, for your time to join us today and just having this chat to about faith, finance, real estate investing. Aaron is today probably builds the most houses in a year in Matamata. Matamata is a small town in New Zealand and is probably most famous for horse breeding and also hobbits. Like if you go to Hobbiton, you will use Matamata as a base. So that's where Aaron, you came from there, right? Aaron, is that right?
Basically, yeah. My family are dairy farmers. There's a lot of dairy farming in the Matamata as well. And yeah, so I think we moved there when I was about 9. So grew up there, went to high school there, and that's where we started the business, yeah.
Oh, very good. Yeah, since you've started that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know a lot more about you than everyone else on this call. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, where you've come from?
Yeah, so as I said, grew up on a dairy farm, had an opportunity to go on the farm. Um, I like the idea of dairy farming. I just don't like working with cows. So I think dairy farming is a fantastic industry. It's just not one for me.
Okay.
So yeah, I always had an interest as a child in building. So as a young guy, did a building apprenticeship that actually progressed into then getting qualified, and I did a little bit of sort of site management type thing when I was at the company where I did my apprenticeship, and then 11 and a bit years ago we started our own company. So took a faith step then, and then yeah, over time, particularly in the last 5 years or 5 or 6 years, have ended up into more of a housing company than just general building. Yeah, and that's sort of how we've got to where we are today.
Oh, cool, cool. So you actually know how to milk a cow professionally?
Yes, yeah, I did. I did spend some time when I was younger in the dairy shed, and even when I first left school, I worked for a dairy farmer for 5 weeks to
Mm-mm.
help him out. It was in the middle of springtime, which is when they're calving cows, and yeah, probably the worst job I've had. Well, it was all right, but it was for a young guy leaving school, it was very big days, and yeah, you leave home. I was leaving home at 4:30 in the morning, getting back home at 6:30, 7 p.m. at night, and I was doing that straight from high school, so it was pretty tough I was then 16 or 17. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I really take my hat off to farmers. I think they're one of the most hardworking people on earth
Yep.
because like there's no break, right? There's no holidays. You can't even afford to go away because if your cow falls sick or there's something to work on the farm, you just gotta be on call all the time and
They
long
can't just
hours.
tell the they can't just tell the cows they're not going to milk them on Christmas Day. They don't have a choice. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. So how then did you I know you mentioned about how you didn't want to be a dairy farmer. But how did you choose like building and real estate as your profession?
Yeah, so I was actually going to leave high school. I was going to drive agricultural machinery and then do an automotive course to be a mechanic.
Mm,
It was actually my mum who encouraged me at the time. She's like, Aaron, you've always been, always enjoyed building as a young kid. Why didn't I try building instead of the agricultural contractor? And if I didn't like the building, I could do being a mechanic. And I'm still building today. So that's sort of how I started. And then I guess the first, like I actually ended up doing an apprenticeship for a company that probably at the time when I was young wasn't my first choice. I now look back and really see that God had a different plan for me. If I didn't do my apprenticeship at that company, I wouldn't have learned a lot of what I did. They were a company who were very good at, they saw if you had ability, they would, I guess, allow you to use that. They were happy to have a young guy sort of give responsibility to me to manage things or, and through that, I guess, because I sort of grabbed a little bit, and so they gave me a little bit more. And so I spent 6 years with this company, and it was, it's funny, it was somewhere that I didn't want to be, and it ended up being a great blessing to me in the end, because when I started my own company, I didn't really have much of a sense on what to do with business, because I've not done any business school, nothing like that. I've just done a building apprenticeship. And then, but I left that company with a fairly good idea on how to coordinate projects. So I could coordinate the subcontractors and all the materials and manage multiple things. And they had me, like I did at the nearing the end of my time there, I did some bank fit outs and like sort of light commercial work, and they're quite high intensity, have to be done in a short time frame. And I guess, I'm thankful for that, because I did learn a lot on how you can sort of layer work and add things together. And then, when I started the company, I just had to learn business, and that's just been a journey over time of surrounding myself with different people. And there was in 2012, I was actually going to stop the company. So we've been in business for 4 years. My oldest brother, who he's managing my parents' dairy farm, he was going to stop working on the farm and do sort of some animal nutrition type work. And I could see that my dad was going to have to sort of step back more into the farm. And I thought I'd better put my hand up here and go and help on the farm. As much as I was reluctant, it's what I felt I needed to do. Anyway, a few months later, my brother actually decided that being on the farm is where he should be. And my parents actually said to me at that time, "Oh, look, we've always got a job here for you. There's something you can do." And I guess at that point, I felt God tapping me on the shoulder saying, "Aaron, if you're willing to give up your building business for your dad, are you willing to do that for me?" And that really impacted me hugely, because I was willing to. I told my staff that I was going to go dairy farming, and I told them to get another job, and then suddenly everything changed, and I was like, okay, hang on, maybe this isn't all what it's supposed to be. And then over a few years' time, that ended up leading us doing a internship at what is now Curate Church. We did that in 2014. We got invited by the pastor there, Joel, to attend Hillsong conference in 2014. There's a long story which I won't. I could be here for a long time telling you, but we ended up going to Hillsong College in mid 2015 in Australia. So we moved over there. We were there for 2 years. Moved back in May 2017, and but actually while being there, it was the home that Tammy and I had first bought as our own home. Had no intention to develop it when we bought it. We just bought it as our home. We ended up lifting that house up, shifting it off, splitting that property into 3, and building and selling 3 houses on it. And we did that whilst we were in Australia, and that's what funded us being students at Hillsong College, at the Bible College. And for the 2 years we were in Australia, we ended up, I think we did about 9 houses back here in New Zealand while being in Australia. And I sort of traveled back and forth between every 3 to 6 weeks for a couple of days at a time. Had a really good building team on the ground here who's still with us today, and which without them we couldn't have done it. There's no it really takes key people to do what we do, and I guess we actually moved to Australia with the thought that we're going to end up in more ministry, like potentially in a pastoring type role, and that sort of all changed. Like, we had an amazing time there and didn't actually want to come home, but God had a different plan and came back and really found purpose in why we have the building business. I guess something I've discovered recently is that there's not actually many people in my position running a housing company who are actually qualified builders. A lot of them have done other sorts of business or whatever, and then ended up buying a housing company or a joint venture or a franchise or something.
Right.
That's sort of what's then led us into development, and we sort of just built more houses and sold them, and that's
awesome.
how we are where we are today.
Awesome. Oh, very good. But just now you were sharing about your how you started your career as an apprentice. Now, apprenticeship is a concept that a lot of people in New Zealand will understand, but a lot of my friends where I come from in Singapore, the concept of apprenticeship is no longer a thing. Like, we don't have apprentices anymore, mainly because we don't have a lot of trades. Maybe in Malaysia there might be, but a lot of my friends, the concept of apprenticeship is actually quite foreign. But I've always encouraged people, especially when they're young, which is exactly what you have said, right? Which is, do not, especially for your first 1 or 2 jobs, do not pay so much attention to how much money you can earn immediately. Pay more attention to who you're working for. Because that's going to be something that will really sow into your life early on in your career. And I think you mentioned earlier as well, in like how you're building team. I think it's really about people, about having the right people around you, having the right mentors, having the right peers who can encourage you, having the right people around you who you can trust to do the work for you. So I think it's a very two-way relationship. If you are today listening and you are in a privileged position where you are able to influence young people and give them a head start, do consider that, hire some young people and teach them and mentor them. And hopefully they can then mentor the next generation, as like what Aaron is probably doing right now with his staff, and what I'm doing with some of my students as well. So that, I think that was something that I picked out in your conversation, in your sharing earlier, and then in the later part about how you surround yourself with the right people. I think really, having the right people around you, being able to leverage their expertise and that talent is going to be so key. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that part of your journey. Talking about your Hillsong experience, was it, how did you manage it? I don't know whether you guys saw because Aaron just talk about it as if it was so easy, right? But in the 2 years, I'm sure it was not an easy task. Were you married at the time? I can't remember now.
Yeah, so we moved over there. Tammy and I moved together. We have 2 girls at the time. Our children were 2 and 5.
Right.
So our eldest daughter had just started school at the time. So we went over and enrolled her in a school. And yeah, we literally, when we moved, we took 4 suitcases, a pushchair, a car seat, and that was it.
Wow.
We rented a 1-bedroom apartment near the campus where we were going to study, and we're just praying that we would find an apartment to rent and furnish the apartment and buy a car within a week. And by God's grace, we did it. We had a few little we set ourselves a few little criteria because, I guess going from living on a 500 square meter section in New Zealand, or 1,000, or from a farm, or whatever it might be, to then we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Sydney for 2 years on the 12th floor, is a very different experience. And so we wanted to have it needed a car park. Ideally, the complex had a pool so that we had something to entertain the children with, and ideally down by the car park, we would have a little storage space so that we could store things like the pushchair or the kids' bikes or that type of thing. And when we were getting fairly desperate, we were getting near at the end of our week, and it was quite expensive. It cost us about $1,200 or more to stay in this apartment for the first week. And we were at that time on a pretty tight budget, and we were praying, and it's like, okay. And we went to this apartment, and there wasn't at that time, apartments were turning over in Sydney in 2 days. So someone would move out, and 2 days later they would be cleaned, and someone would move in, and there was nothing available. So it was just, we walked in. The lady's like, actually, I've just had one come available. We went up, and this apartment felt like home. It just, the only thing I could put it down to is it was a very similar experience. When I did my apprenticeship, I spent a lot of time actually working away. I did about 2 years working in Whitianga. So we would travel on a Monday morning, and then stay there for the week and travel back home on a Friday afternoon. And I remember one time we came home for Christmas. We shut down for a few weeks holiday. We went back to this home after Christmas, and it felt like home, which was really strange to me because it wasn't my home. And I guess when we walked through this apartment, I had the same feeling. I asked the lady, does it have the complex had a pool and it had a car park, and I said, does it have a storage box at the car park? She's like, oh no. We're like, oh no, it feels right. So that's what we signed up for. Anyway, a couple of days later, when we were moving in, we drove into the car park building, pulled up into our car park space, and in front of our car park space was a very large storage room that had our room number on it. And so we went up and asked the lady. I was like, I thought you said there wasn't one. And she's like, it must be yours. So it was a real confirmation that we were doing the right thing. And we sort of experienced lots of things like that through our time at Hillsong. And
Speaking of which, I think you've also shared with me on a couple of occasions about how some of these really very divine encounters on your journey. Could you share with us some of these that you've experienced?
Yeah. So one in particular was we moved back. We decided to. Sorry, I've just realized I didn't answer your question before about how we managed Hillsong College and building. I'll talk about that in a second. But when we moved back from Sydney, we decided that we moved back on the 1st of May 2017. But at that time, I was still studying part-time. But we realized it was cheaper for me to fly back to Australia once every week than it was for us to keep living there, and we stayed with family back in New Zealand just to get the girls settled in. Anyway, one of the journeys I flew from, it was the first time I'd ever flown from Tauranga to Auckland before going Auckland, Sydney, and it's only a 25-minute flight, very, very quick flight. And I sat next to this guy on the plane, and I said, what do you do? He said, bit of building, bit of development. I was like, so do I. We talked a bit longer, and I was like, who do you work for? He's like, Classic Builders. I was okay, that's cool. And we talked a bit longer, and ended up saying, what's your role there? He said he's one of the owners. I was like, wow. And at that point, he sort of brought up that they built 700 houses that year, and I was like, great, we built 7. So it was he was someone who was a lot further down the journey than what I was at the time. But I guess for me it was I had some sort of questions on, not for him in particular, but just I guess for myself and my spirit and in our path of where, do we focus on more development or do we focus on building? And and I kind of got some real answers out of that, not sort of intentionally, it just sort of happened. And so that was an incredible experience. That sort of helped us. And then just going back to what you said before, I guess for me, when I was actually a student, it wasn't like a degree or master's. It was a level 4 certificate initially. Then the second year was a bit higher and higher. So it wasn't that intense, but I guess I found it good with there was enough break time between classes, and I didn't have that much on that. I just sort of was able to manage it around the study. Also, with New Zealand being 2 hours in front of Sydney, I quite often would do work, and I'd wake up and start working at 5 a.m. in Sydney, which would be 7 a.m. back in New
Yep.
Zealand. And I'd do a few hours in the morning and do it then, and then go to college for the day. And then when I'd been there for a year, I got an opportunity to work on staff at Hillsong Church. So I went down to doing part-time study at Hillsong, and being full-time staff. But at the same time, we were still building back here, and we sold 5 houses in 6 weeks.
Wow.
That was near the end of 2016, where the market was probably similar as to what it is now in New Zealand, or maybe not quite as what it is, but it was. And I was just, oh my goodness, we've got a big commitment here now to do. And so, yeah, by the end of 2016, I wasn't managing it very well. So that the first year we were there, it was great, like studying and doing building and stuff. We managed that really well, but the next 6 months was pretty tough, to be honest. Like by the end of 2016, I was very much burnt out. I didn't realize at the time, but I remember one day it got to about 2 PM, and I just had to walk home. I was just absolutely mentally done. I couldn't.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd dealt with a few bits, like we'd come across a contaminated hole on a property that we didn't anticipate, which cost us a lot, and things like that we were dealing with. And it wasn't all as easy as I guess I made it sound.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it's tough. I guess one of the takeaways from what you've just shared in the last few minutes is that, in a sense, Christians like to over spiritualize a lot of things. We like to, as if, we sometimes we make God into like a Santa Claus and just gives us good gifts just like that. I'm sure he could, but I think God also wants us to learn as children to mature, and often it takes hard work. It takes hard yards to you've paid the price in a sense to really work hard, but at the same time, whilst working hard, trusting the Lord for the provision, trusting the Lord for the outcome. So we do our part, we work as hard as we can. I mean, even when you think about the stories in the Old Testament, whether it's Abraham or Joseph or anybody, they all had to do something. Even Moses, he had a hard time leading however many millions of Jews that he was bringing out of Egypt. Joseph, when he was given, you may think of him as, he's a prime minister, but still he had a lot of work to do. There was a lot of administrative tasks that he had to handle. So there is hard work involved as well. And I think you've exemplified that in how you were able to juggle your college studies in Hillsong and then managing your building and selling and that process back home in New Zealand. So that's a really great example of how our work ethic is not something that can take second place just because we are Christians. It's something that we as believers actually need to show the world that we have the best work ethic on earth, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I think quite often for me, I sort of believe that God's quite often got something waiting for us, but he requires us to take the faith step. And it's quite often then when we've actually taken that faith step through whatever it might be. But faith is trusting in him, and it's part of trusting in him is sometimes putting the hard work in to get to kind of go to the direction you feel called to go in. And then he's quite often been there when we've got there. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So coming from you, I will consider you to be the real estate expert in this conversation. So and I know that a lot of people, especially the New Zealanders and my friends in Singapore, like the Chinese, we all love real estate. We all love investing in real estate. So I would like to also provide some practical takeaways for people, whether is it buying their first home or buying an investment property. So from a developer's point of view, could you share with us what are some of the things that if we are buying our first home or investing in real estate we should look out for, how would you advise someone to go about making that decision?
Probably my number one bit of advice would be, I never calculate with capital growth in mind. So to be honest, I'm not an expert when it comes to rental investments and those sorts of things like that. That's an area that I really want to learn a lot in, from a residential standpoint and a commercial standpoint and return on investment. But from a developing standpoint, I think it's the same on any kind of investment, is that to not budget on capital growth, because capital growth may not happen. And so if we were to look at perhaps getting a plot of land, a section, or something to maybe split up, I will work out, what will the land cost us, what is the development cost, what is the build cost, and then what is the sale price in today's market, even if we're not going to sell it for a year or 18 months or 2 years time, because the development process can take some time. And I guess I try and do that because developing is a very risky business, and I mean, we're only we do more, I guess we probably build 50% on our own land that we've developed and 50% on others' land that they've developed, or other spare land. And so I'm very small in the developing game, but as I guess we've grown, it does get quite scary with what you're doing, and trying to make sure that things do add up, and there is the element of risk, and I guess where there is risk, there is potentially reward, but where there is risk, there's also the potential for failure.
Yes.
So yeah, without risk, it's hard to if I wasn't willing to take a risk on something, everyone else would be wanting to do the same thing as us. So particularly the first few properties that we looked at doing little developments on were generally ones that others wouldn't touch. One of them, if I would have known what I knew, we probably wouldn't have either. That was the one where we found contamination, but it worked out for us in the end. It was okay, thankfully, because the thing that pulled us out of that one was the fact that the market did increase. If the market didn't increase, it would have been a different story. But at least because I didn't budget on that, we had some room.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my number one thing would be, I don't work on capital growth. Like, capital growth is a bonus if it happens, but it's not the from a buying a home standpoint, like, I personally find it's a little bit different at the moment, but quite often what we've done is, when we sell a home and land package off the plan, generally basically all of them, that when they've been completed, they've been worth more than what we sold them for. So quite often, if someone has the ability to buy off the plan, generally they are buying it up. Normally something off the plan is priced on today's market, and it may not be finished for 18 months. So you can budget on a bit of that capital growth potentially. Another thing is, which we have not been able to afford to do, like, if we had, at the moment in this current market, if we had built houses, we would sell them. The reality is we can't afford to do that. We've not worked out some kind of funding stream to be able to do that yet. And also for me, that's a risk thing. If we were to get some funding to build what you would call spec homes, to speculate basically, you generally, we would find that homes for us would sell for a bunch more when they're finished, because people can actually walk through them, they can touch, they can feel, it's tangible. Whereas if they're buying from us off the plan, it is a bare piece of land and a piece of paper, or maybe a nice 3D render, or if you're really lucky, a 3D walkthrough or something, but it's still not quite the same.
Right.
Yeah, so I think, and then probably the best thing we did, some advice I got given a couple of years ago is, if someone tried to save, if it was a couple earning and they were trying to save $200,000 because they wanted to get a large deposit prior to buying their home, generally by the time they'd been able to save that money, their houses increased faster than what they could save, type thing, in value. And so another thing I read once was the best time to buy property was 20 years ago. You can't do that. So the best time is now. It's hard to sort of say that in this New Zealand market at the moment because things are just going up and up and up. So what might happen in 6 months or 12 months time, I don't know. But yeah,
Oh.
so that's just a few. As I said, I don't really have much wisdom to share around rentals and investments and that type of thing. I just share what I've experienced. Yeah.
But what I like what you shared, especially for first home buyers, I like to encourage people to buy their first home as soon as they can. Now, even if you brought a very important point, by the time you're able to save up that 200,000, the market may have moved. So what used to be 200,000 deposit by the time you got to the 200,000 might be 250 or even 300,000. By the time you get there. So one way that you could do is for example, if you're looking to buy your first home, you don't buy your first, don't look for the ideal one, just get started. Buy a smaller one if you need to, buy somewhere else if you need to. If you need to work in Auckland, for example, you can continue to rent in Auckland, but buy in, I don't know, for lack of a better place, Meta or Patakani, or Invercargill, that's right, Invercargill. So Aaron is going to develop, how many houses, what's the plan for Invercargill?
I don't know. Is the honest answer. We've got 4-5 under construction at different phases at the moment. We're going to do some development down there. We've got a block of land where we're going to do initially between 11 and 15. We're looking at other little opportunities down there as well. So I think we pride ourselves in offering a good home at an affordable price. I say to people, we're not in business to rip people off, but we are in business to make money. Otherwise, just like everyone is, there's no point. But we want to be transparent and so it's been a big project down there to try and figure out all of our rates and get contractors and work with people down there and been pretty blessed really with the people we have on board, and I've got a great young guy who we've employed down there now, and so it's I'm going down there Tuesday.
Awesome.
So
that's right. If you can just get started anywhere in New Zealand is very interesting, because coming from Singapore, right, it took me a while actually to understand this, because in Singapore, like, land is scarce, like, it's a little island, you can't extend beyond the island, the only way is to go up or go down, you can't grow horizontally much anymore. So when I first came to New Zealand, I was like, why are property prices so strong? Like, I don't understand. Such a huge country, there's very little people here compared to, the population density in places like Singapore, Hong Kong. Why is it that property prices have not come off? I mean, I'm beginning to understand a little bit now, the planning rules. There's so many ingredients that have caused it. I guess the biggest one of them would be like undersupply, and there are so many issues around being able to develop easily that I don't think it's a problem that will go away anytime soon. So I think real estate is going to continue to be a viable investment vehicle for a lot of people. And if you need to buy a home, try to get one as soon as you can, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess they, with the COVID and lockdown and stopping immigration and tourism and these things, they thought, that would potentially help. But I don't think they. I think something I heard earlier last year was there's a million New Zealand passport holders who live out of New Zealand.
11 million.
1 million. 1 million New Zealanders. 1 million, yeah, because there's only 5 million of us here. So there's 1 million apparently who live overseas. 500,000 of them, it sounds like, are in Australia, but then the other 500,000 are elsewhere, and it's not surprising that a lot of people have been moving home. There's a lot of so as much as we don't have the immigration like we did, we have New Zealanders moving back home because I guess and that's not helping. And also a lot of them, I think, that are coming home have some finance. Potentially they might have been high earners where they were, or I'm not sure, but they're obviously coming home and needing somewhere to live, and so that with on top of the undersupply, has not helped at all.
Oh, fantastic.
Just give me one moment, Joshua. Just sorry.
Fantastic. I think Aaron maybe has gone to attend to his little girl or something. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have been benefiting from this interview. I deliberately chose Aaron to come on for today because I've known Aaron for the last 3 to 4 years now. He talked about how he was in Hillsong College and has come back. So I think he would have come back to New Zealand around the same time that I moved to New Zealand in early 2017. And when I first met Aaron, he always came across as this very gentle, but yet I don't know, something just struck me about him that this would be a great guy to become friends with. And I'm glad I got to know Aaron a lot better over the last few years. And we've had lots of coffees together, just sharing life together. And I thought that having him on today to share his experience in real estate will be beneficial, especially if you are in New Zealand or considering investing in real estate in New Zealand, to hear from a builder's point of view about the market here. Okay, welcome back, Aaron.
Sorry about that. I realized that I had a dog stuck in the room with me, and I think he may have needed a bathroom break. So
okay.
I had to quickly let him out before he went bathroom in the room.
So. That would not be nice. Okay. Do you have could you share with us also maybe your favorite financial of habit or money tip?
That's a good question. I think there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. So, debt on an appreciating asset, such as a home, you can work to your advantage. Debt on depreciating things, such as cars or boats or TVs or fridges or whatever, are generally not a good thing to do. So we've, we don't have it perfect, and we are quite highly debt loaded, I guess you could say, but we've been able to use it to, I guess, we've been able to turn the debt into more income for us than the interest that debt is costing us.
Oh, awesome.
So we've had some friends of ours who a few years ago they were in some bad debt. They had and for them, for me, I look at the figure of what it was, and it's not massive, but if I put myself in their situation, it was a really big hole to try and climb out of. And so we sat with them and we made a bit of a plan and how they could, we looked at what they had. Well, they were fantastic. They were really honest and transparent with us. And so we looked at what higher interest ones they had and when was due, and just made a plan and how can you try and pay this off? And so 3 years later, or just under that, they are now debt free.
Wow.
And they're now he's actually got a bit of a Kiwi saver, so a superannuation that, and then they're trying to save a little bit of deposit, and they're in that position now of trying to get their first home.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, and so that bad debt for them was really crippling. Now that they're out of that, they've now found freedom, and now they can look at getting themselves into something where they can make the debt work for themselves. For me, I guess if I see something as like a rental, if I was renting a property, it means that I'm pretty well paying someone else's mortgage. So why don't I just pay my own? That's sort of my theory. It doesn't always work. Like we're leasing a small office for our business at the moment. Like we don't need to build a commercial building. We can't really afford to do that. And so at the moment that's okay. Like it's a claimable thing for us, and it's not the end of the world. But especially when it comes to your home, if you can try and, I think the biggest thing that New Zealanders struggle with for their first home is that deposit. You know, a lot of people, especially in the rent that they're paying now, a lot of rents that people are paying could pay a mortgage that would, you know, purchase them a home, their first home. But they, you know, and I guess it's the culture we live in. We see something, we want to buy it. You know, that's
yeah.
So yeah, people get new things and whatever, and I guess don't necessarily live, or they, yeah, it's just trying to, it's just, I watched when Bourne and Brittany were on, and yeah, they said do what others won't do today, so you can do what others can't do tomorrow. And I really like that saying, because it's so true. Like these friends of ours who have got themselves out of debt, like they had to sacrifice and worked hard. Like they did it all with not earning great money, but they made the sacrifice to pay off their debt, and now they're in a position to do what others can't. So yeah.
Okay. Hey, I've just got a question from the audience. Adam, actually, I don't know if you know him. He's asking, why are you developing in Invercargill of all places? Because for context, right? Because I noticed there are quite a few people on this watching now.
What's Adam's surname?
McNally.
No, I'm not sure if I know. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, just for context, you know, Invercargill is the southernmost city in New Zealand. So it's a really, I don't know, remote. I've never been there. I'm in Dunedin right now, which is maybe 2 hours drive from Invercargill. New Zealand is it's not big, but you know, from north to south is quite long, and it's quite a long way to get to Invercargill. It's like there's no reason for anyone to be in Invercargill for like, yeah.
No, so my dad bought a boat from a company who manufactures boats in Invercargill.
Okay.
We flew down there November 2018, so just over 2 years ago, just to have a look at the boat under construction. So just my dad and I. When I was flying into Invercargill, I had this, I would call it a gut feeling of, you could build here. And I thought to myself, why would I do that? It's, as you said, if you look at a map of New Zealand and I chose the furthest place away, it is Invercargill.
Yep.
So anyway, and that was strange. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, a year later, so November 2019, we sold a house to a house in Matamata to some dairy farmers from Invercargill, also past Hillsong College people who had been connected through someone else. They dairy farm down there in Invercargill, and they bought a home from us. Their bank manager called me, based in Invercargill, and asked me a whole lot of questions about Matamata. And so I answered them, and I guess when I was on the phone to him, I had the same gut feeling of that day when I flew in there of, I should ask him about Invercargill. So when I asked him, you know, what he sort of told me, I thought, oh, wow, okay. So I did a little bit of Googling and a little bit of searching online and thought, this is too much of a coincidence. I need to hop on a plane and go and have a look. So we went down there, and I went down there twice at the end of 2019 just to do some looking around. And I guess I really, I noticed that there was a space in the market where I thought we could really add value. And yeah, even little things like we have a radio ad on the Christian radio station Life FM, and we were looking at a particular property at the time, and we pulled up to this property with Life FM on in the car in Invercargill, and our radio ad came on the radio while we were, like, literally as we pulled up to the property, it's the Bennett Homes radio ad. I was like, oh, well, okay, that's strange. And then the next day we went back to the property at a different time, and the same thing happened. And I don't know what times the ad goes on air because it's random. And I was like, okay, this is too much of a coincidence. So that was enough for me to book flights to go back again. We went back, and yeah, I guess, as I said, the main thing is we noticed that there's a hole in the market where we thought we could add value. And so it's been really helpful for us when we've gone down there is we've been able to say, because it's a genuine thing, like we genuinely are down in Invercargill to add value to the community. Like we yes, as I said earlier, we're in business to make money. Like but we're not in business to rip people off. We want to build good homes for an affordable price and add value to
Mm,
the community. And and I guess like looking at it, Invercargill is almost a larger version of Matamata. It's a Matamata's got 8 or 10,000 people, and it's supported by a rural community. Invercargill's got about 50,000, and just supported by a
mm,
very big, it's the main hub for Southland.
mm.
So there's a lot of, even the people in Invercargill are very, very similar to Matamata.
Oh, very good.
So that's sort of how we
Awesome.
ended up down there.
Oh, awesome. I really like what you just shared. And it reminds me, I was actually going to ask you a question about faith, but what you just shared actually answers it beautifully because, we like to think of, we as Christians, we sometimes will pray, we ask God for wisdom, for guidance, and then we expect God to like almost speak to us in a booming voice. But unfortunately, that's not what he usually does. Even with, what's his name? That prophet who was hiding in the rocks, and then God, there was the wind, there was the storm, but God was in a still small voice. And I think for us as well, it's very important to know that God speaks to us on the inside, and then He brings about circumstances like what you've just described. Look, obviously, it could be a coincidence, but I choose to see these as God incidences that He places in our lives, and these are some of the divine encounters that I've been really looking forward to hear from you as well. Like how this divine God placing these divine incidences in your path to lead you on every single step of the way, and He shows you just one step. And then just one step at a time, taking you to giving you the idea of even thinking about Invercargill, going there, and then playing that song when you were stepping into Bennett homes, that sort of thing. Um, I think as Christians, when you're making decisions on whether you're going to buy a house, this house, that house, whatever it is, just ask the Lord and listen to the still small voice in your heart. Often He really will speak to us there more than through as a booming voice or like in the thunder. Yeah.
For me, that's, I guess, how we've done.
Mm,
It's just been a journey over time of the more we've trusted in God and His direction
mm,
for our lives.
mm.
I
Okay.
just try and be aware of potentially, and sometimes things might be coincidence, but I guess the more I've seen, the less I think things are coincidence for us, type thing, and so we just try and be aware and open, and pray about what we're doing,
Mm,
and
mm.
also, but as I said earlier on, and still be willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
So it's sort
Mm,
of quite surreal to think that now, a
mm,
year later, our show home down there is
mm,
almost complete.
mm, mm.
So it's
Oh,
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I really would like to do a plug for you. Like, look, if you're watching this and you're in the market for a first home or investment home or whatever, do check out Bennett Homes. I think that's bennetthomes.co.nz. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, just go check out bennetthomes.co.nz. I've literally seen the product that Aaron has built. Is really high quality for the money that you are paying to buy a home. Do check them out. So before we go, Aaron, is there any last piece of advice that you can give to our audience regarding faith and money or business that they can take away with them?
um yeah, I think you can't, like, part of faith is just um actually trusting in God, and being willing to step towards where you think He's calling you.
Mm,
So,
awesome.
but also being willing to then also stop.
Mm,
So for me, I am naturally I guess if I know what something's going to happen, I want to get there now. And so even for me, the little bits of prophecy and things we've had over the time, like, quite often, I believe God only gives me a little wee fraction of the picture. Because if I knew what the end result was, I'd want to get there yesterday. It's just my natural, it's who I am. I like to try and have things progress. And so, but also that in the past has led me to, nothing horrendous, I guess, has happened, but I guess I've gone down paths when I was younger that perhaps weren't the best, as far as decisions I'd made around things and whatever, and just sort of learning on perhaps, like, I guess a good example would be, when we'd kind of learned was things were just strangely hard for us when we were trying to plant ourselves further in Australia. So we'd been there nearly 2 years. We were looking to buy an apartment or do something because we believed that we were going to be in Australia for quite some time. And it was just strangely difficult. And I would call that like some doors were closed, and I think it was God really going, no, and I guess then we tried a different avenue. We were, reluctantly, we thought, let's look at the option of moving back. And it's like the doors were like, everything was incredibly easy. It's like, okay, I mean, that may not be the same thing for everyone, but for us, it's trying to be aware. But I think faith takes, a lot of trust and being willing to risk and also, having a bit of a go. So
awesome. Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for your time. I think that was great advice. The last thing, I think that if anything that I can sort of use the word to describe will be that faith thing, like being and being obedient to the voice of God every single step of the way, submitting to His leading, and even when you don't see the whole picture, but you see a glimpse of it, and just take that faith step forward, one step by one step. So thanks so much for your time, for sharing with us your experience and life story and real estate. And I hope everyone who's watching has learned something from it. This video will stay on the page. Feel free to share with your friends, invite them to view it. And hopefully, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put it into the Facebook group. I'll be happy to answer them on real estate or anything like that. And definitely go and check out bennetthomes.co.nz. And before I go, I just want to show you, I mentioned at the start, like I'm in my caravan. So this is what my caravan looks like. This is where the kids are sleeping, and I'm sitting. I'm actually in the kids' room at the moment. My room is in the front, and we are parked up just outside some park in Dunedin. But I wanted to say this last thing, which is that no matter what you're doing, right, do not let your circumstances stop you. I could have chosen to not do this because I'm on holiday, but I had already committed. Okay, I want to do at least one interview a month. I already asked Aaron to do this, so I don't want to ever compromise on what I promised. And I said, okay, we'll do it. I have my laptop with me, I have my mobile phone with me. I can hot sync with the mobile data, and so far it's worked beautifully. Thank God there's been no glitches at all. So it's fantastic. So once again, thank you, Aaron, and thanks everyone for tuning in. This video is going to stay on, and I bless you for the year ahead and whatever you're going to be up to for the coming week. Thank you, and here's signing off. See you, everyone. Bye.